Today, I want to welcome Todd White. Todd's got an amazing background that started in engineering and software and management roles across 20 different industries and continents. And then he moved into the world of coaching. But all this started with a bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering. But his real passion today is about developing high potential employees into strong leaders who are trusted and critical thinkers and problem solvers. He leverages his unique perspective and storytelling to effect change. He excels at navigating the complexity and ambiguity of today's dynamic resource demands. Todd's passion is to help executive leaders build the A team of their dreams. Todd, welcome to Leaders and Legacies.
Thank you for having me today, Craig.
So, we were chatting a little bit in the green room before we got started, and you started to tell me a story that sounds pretty important. So, did you grow up in West Virginia?
I'm a hillbilly, was born in West Virginia, grew up in Virginia, Twin Cities, in the Bluefield, Virginia, West Virginia area.
Okay, Bluefield. So, for those that aren't familiar with the geography, is that like southwestern Virginia, southern West Virginia?
It's southwestern Virginia. If you know where Virginia Tech Blacksburg is, get on 460 and drive west about 45 minutes.
There's a fella, what's his name? Oliver Anthony or something like that. He just released a
Anthony
song.
Oliver, yeah, he's in Franklin. That's closer to Lynchburg. Lynchburg's 3.5 to 4 hours east of where I grew up.
Okay.
I'm right in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah.
Bluefield's like 3,500 feet above sea level.
What was that song he released just to kind of jog people's memories? I forgot the name of it, but it kind of took off by a storm.
I think it's something about north of Richmond, the something north of Richmond. That he was gangbusters there for a while.
Yeah, yeah. Now that you mention it, I think it was Rich Men North of Richmond. I think it was a
Hey,
commentary
yeah.
on people in DC looking out for themselves, but not necessarily the people in Southern Virginia.
Well, pretty much anywhere you get you get between the two coastlines, the east or the west, you find out how the normal Americans live, and they're just caught up in day to day and getting by, and that's his story.
Yeah. So, so anyway, this is where you grew up, and what did your dad do?
When my dad had his own business, he started in 1966 selling used cars. I actually grew up under his desk. I took my naps under his desk. So I grew up in the business, meeting people, talking people, just working in his business up through my teenage years.
Okay. And why so obviously now you live in the outskirts of Houston, you live in Sugarland.
Right.
What got you from there to here?
That is a dangerous story. I went to school in Eastern Virginia, Old Dominion. That's where you get an engineering degree in four different schools in Virginia. Anyway, I wound up at Old Dominion. uh, got my engineering degree. Once I got my engineering degree, I've lived in North Carolina, South Carolina, um, Pennsylvania, Texas, time in Taiwan. I've lost track of how many different times I've moved, but what got me into Sugarland was Accenture recruited me from Dubai, said I could live in Texas, Chicago, or Atlanta, Georgia. I chose Houston area because I'd been here quite a few times doing work in the oil and gas industry sector. And when they brought me in for a go-to-market lead to run that advisory, that I chose Houston.
Yeah. So why not? I mean, so a lot of people that grow up in Southern Virginia and West Virginia, they just live their whole lives there. What prompted you to move away? What happened?
Well, it's a great place to be from, and it's absolutely terrific people. But when you look to that region, pretty much everything that made it has dwindled out, been bought up, merged, or just absolutely killed. So I watched that happen when I was in my In the 80s, when I was in high school, I watched unemployment in certain areas 60% plus, interest rates 19, 20% plus. I watched my dad lose his business after all of those years. And I was really determined to get out of there. I had the capability to get out of there because I, pursued my education at that level, but I made a conscious choice to move on. Now I just did my 40-year high school reunion and went back and still see the same people are still there. They're still great people, but they're still trying to figure out how to navigate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you started off with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering.
Right.
And the so when I hear some of the places you meant, well, when I hear Dubai, I immediately think of oil, but probably shouldn't. I know there's a lot of things going on in Dubai. What did you do with your engineering degree originally?
Well, right out of school, I interviewed with the Electron Accelerator over in Newport News, interviewed 3 times with them to be told I had the job only to find out I didn't. So that upended me right out of the blocks. Then I moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, got a job in Purelator Facet where they make elements for filters, all those different things. After 6 months, they said, "We love you, but you don't work here anymore." So then during that time, I'd been sending out resumes, CVs. That led me to being one of 5 engineers that were hired to go to Taiwan, learn everything about a new facility, come back to Lake City, South Carolina, and build that. Uh, then that progressed. If we keep going on here, we'll run through 30 years of me moving and jabbing and poking. I've reinvented myself no less than 5 times, but at a certain level, when I was with Sony, with head of engineering and operations, moved from there into software. So that was really my first transition away, getting into sales and marketing and technical delivery and training. And then the next phase of that was being recruited out of an organization in Connecticut, Southbury, Connecticut, getting into strategy consulting, working all over the United States specifically, but also globally, doing business assessments and moving organizations forward. Now, if you really want to go further, we can do that, but it all opens up a can of worms at each stretch.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Taiwan. Where in Taiwan were you?
Taipei, we lived in Tai Taisu Dalo Tunwa Belu, which was the top of it's a large building. It's headquarters for Nanya. I worked for Nanya Plastics.
Okay. Is that so? If you go from the center of Taipei, which direction would you go to that?
Well, that was literally right in the center of Taipei. That's where that building is, and then for us, they sent us to the factories to learn everything. So it was about a 25-minute drive south of there.
Okay, down towards Taoyuan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've you've been there.
I've spent a lot of time in Taiwan. Um,
Well, my wife is Taiwanese. If she was my Chinese teacher, that's a whole nother story.
one of the things I'll tell you, Taiwan is one of my favorite places to do business in the entire world, if not my favorite, because in Tai, I can stay in a nice hotel in Taipei and I can do 3 meetings, even if some of the meetings are over in Hsinchu, and I can do 3 meetings in one day and get more done in one day in Taiwan than I can in 3 days in China.
Well, you have to explain that one because I've lived in both.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was my experience, but I loved it. I loved doing business in China, in Taiwan. So you lived in China as well.
Correct.
Where,
Lived. Well, it's we're doing some work out in I'd moved some of my team members to California to do some work with a systems integrator, and the CEO was out there, and we struck up a conversation. What are you doing out here? And anyway, that led to a conversation about them looking to expand into China. And he said, would you be interested? Well, let's have a conversation. So that was in November of 2017. In January 2018, I'm in the middle of Beijing for 3 months on my own, setting up operations over there.
Oh my goodness. And um and was your wife with you during that time?
No, no, it's just me. And you probably picked up my Chinese is enough to maybe communicate with the 3 or 4 year old. So I wound up in Beijing in a set of corporate, I guess, corporate style living apartments that were furnished. But you can imagine being there in January. It's cold. You got to get bundled up. You got to walk out, find yourself something to eat, all of those elements. So if you were within a few blocks of that Western style community, you're okay. But you learn very quickly. You venture out too far, you have to kind of point at a menu and ask because you don't. At that point, you don't have English. All you got's the Chinese, those characters, and it was a bit of a gamesmanship. And then you figure out where you can go and what you can get at your fingertips. KFC was one of my favorite places. KFC in China is actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. What was so a lot of people never experience that. It's one thing, if you go to a Western country, there's at least some norms, some commonalities that you would expect
Yeah.
that kind of anchor you. But although Beijing is a very international city, as you say, you get away from the international pockets and you're in China. How would if you knew somebody that was going to Beijing and had to navigate what you navigated, what advice would you give to them?
Uh, find yourself somebody that speaks Chinese and will let you snot around on their sleeve so you don't have to figure it all out for yourself. But when you're out on your own and you got to learn how to say hello, how are you? Uh, just learn how to engage on a basic human level. And most people, if you're trying, they'll figure out how to engage with you. But fundamentally, be respectful. Attempt to speak the language, and at a certain level, you'll find some people that will speak Chinese, or no, obviously they speak Chinese, but you'll find they speak English and can tolerate your inability to meet the intonations with Chinese.
Yeah. Were there any sandstorms when you were there?
In China, or definitely not China, but we had those in Dubai. I know in Dubai there were sandstorms that came in that just shut everything down. We were in
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi one day.
Yeah. What's that like to be in the middle of one of those?
It's not well. I was inside a tall building when it happened. I was relatively isolated. My wife and daughter were at the pool at the apartment complex we were staying in Dubai, and everybody started grabbing things and running in. They didn't know what was going on, but it's literally you're just being pelted like you're in a sandblaster. So the best thing you can do is get out of the way, hunker down, and get inside.
I'm surprised, especially with all those tall glass buildings. I'm surprised the glass weathers it as well as it does.
Oh, those buildings are constructed to withstand a lot when it comes to wind and other, glass looks like it's not very strong, but it's actually quite strong.
Yeah. Interesting. So anyway, so so that's what you were doing in engineering, but today you're not doing engineering. What do you do for folks these days?
Mhm. I used to, when I started ClearPeg, I made a conscious decision, and based on all of my experience, I would go into, well, I'm an engineer. I do business assessments. I do strategy. I do consulting. I do professional development. I was talking to a guy one day, kind of like this, like, you're a pretty good, you're a pretty cool guy. I like talking to you, but I'd have no idea what to hire you for. And I was like, ooh, that is true. I better get focused. We were talking about focus is the price of success. And I was on site with a client traveling in a hotel, jacked up in a hotel, recognizing here again. I am working with a client that really probably doesn't care more. I care more about the success of their project than they do. I said, what am I doing? I really love building, growing teams, developing people, seeing that eye light up moment when you're working with young professional or whatever people that are just looking to go to the next step. And I made it. Actually, I told the client, I said, I was working through I said, listen, this isn't for me, and we're not going to continue to do this. I'm not just going to leave you high and dry. Let's work this one through. And then I do not want any more engagements like this. And so we kind of sunset, and I keep up with that organization to this day. I don't like to burn bridges, but that for me, it's when you start recognizing the first time you say no to something is it's very enlightening because you develop that point of focus, and that's where ClearPeg is being intentional.
Yeah, I love what you said. Focus is the price of success. I don't think I've ever heard that before. I mean, intuitively, it makes sense. What is that something you coach others in, or is that just a principle that drives you in running ClearPeg?
I do get to other people. It comes to having a perspective, a point of view. And I equate it to like trying to teach a child to tie shoes. I cannot have a consultative conversation with them. It's very prescriptive. And eventually that becomes effortless. So that level of focus, you watch them, they're really focused on it. Eventually it gets to effortless. You just get up, put your shoes on and tie them. Uh, and then, at some point you might have a consultative relationship with that child as they're running track or other different events or hiking. So you might get into a consultative, but it really focuses about what are you making a conscious choice to take to a level of effortless. I like to use the analogy of a musician. I've 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 noodled around with guitars for more than 15 years now, but I've never taken it to an exact level of effortless. When you watch a professional musician, I was at a blues bar here in Houston. It's been a year or two ago now, but I'm watching this young lady. Uh, she's playing the guitar, she's singing. There's people in the bar that are her friends. They're getting up to exit, and she's nodding at them and kind of she's doing all of this at a level of effort less. You don't get there without having the focus, the time, the attention. And a lot of people, they have a lot of wants and desires, but they never put in the level of effort to actually achieve the results that they want. So those things have to be congruent, which is being intentional, being focused, and taking something to effortless. Effortless doesn't mean you're lazy. It just means you've mastered it, right?
And that's another point that I really like. And I just want to make sure we capture that. You know, focus gets you to the point of effortlessness. And you in the context of music, I was watching an interview with Kid Rock, and he was sitting around talking to a couple other people. And at one point, he just picked up a guitar and started tuning it, and then took a beer can and played slide guitar with a beer
Yeah.
can. And I'm watching him, and for a second, I'm sitting there thinking, "Wow, that looks really hard," but he's making it look easy. And then I realize, oh, this is a guy who's had a guitar in his hand most of his waking hours
Right.
for 20 or 30 years.
It's like Stevie Ray Vaughan. His brother Jimmy had a guitar, and he told Stevie he could never touch it. And Stevie, when he was in high school, he was sneaking out playing gigs, right? And he just took it to an extreme level. But I heard stories he would play till his fingertips would bleed, and maybe he'd super glue and keep going on. But that level of passion, Eddie Van Halen, while his friends were out partying and he's at 14 years old, staying home, just absolute focus, relentless focus. But if you do something, 10, 12, 15 hours a day, you're going to get good at it. As Alex Hormozy says, you got to get your number of bats and recognize you're going to suck initially, but you got to keep doing it. You don't step into the major leagues playing baseball and think you're going to hit a home run. You got to put in your time, your due diligence, your energy, and the level these sports professionals play at now. They've got not one coach, but multiple coaches. And, Patrick Holmes, I was watching a thing on him on Netflix. He's had a professional coach since he was in the fourth grade,
Yeah.
not just one, but multiples. Somebody that'll do 10 or 15 hours a day of investment and focus, you can't compete with that. If you are, you better be able to do the time, and put in that effort, right?
Well, and you brought in the idea of, the concept of baseball. There's a statistic that fascinates me. So last year's season, there were exactly 9 people that batted over 300
Oh, yeah.
and only 2 that batted below 200. And the the difference between being the absolute best in the league and fired is the difference at 1 at bat out of 10.
Mm. It's that's how do you even start to digest that? And living in China, you recognize these people have people working for me have PhDs, multiple degrees, working 10, 12, 15 hours a day. And we're working on proposals and other things. And they're like, oh, by the way, we're going to have to work this weekend. I'm like, all right, you're telling me we got to work this weekend. I'm all in. Let's go.
Yeah.
So you got that level of grit, energy, passion, and determined to be successful. And that's what people in the United States don't get. We've been we just don't understand the level of drive and going after things that's going to happen. Like I have coaches in India or what have you, but it's you think about that 1.5 billion people in India and Chinese. You some one in a million. Well, if you're 1 in a million sport, there's 1,500 more just like you, trying to differentiate and working to differentiate themselves.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Well, we're almost out of time here, and I want to make sure that before we wrap up, people know who ClearPeg is and what you do for people.
We're focused on professional development. We work with growth minded individuals, which means everything that we just touted there, they're on fire, they're going for it, they're not afraid to failure, they're becoming subject matter experts. Um, we're really focused on getting people to the next level. I spend a whole lot of time trying to say I'm not a coach. Well, we are coaches. You'd be looking for a better word than that. Um, but literally, it's about people don't want to buy a coach. They want to buy an advantage. And that's what we do. The old thing, you don't buy a shovel, you buy a hole. We're into giving people the advantage that they need to ramp them quickly, let them build out and grow their point of view on their career. What do they need? How they want to get there. We never tell people what to do. We don't tell them how to do their functional role, but we do engage and we share, how we can ramp them quickly.
Well, excellent. And how do people reach you if they want to do that?
Easiest way to reach me is by email, and that's Todd at clearpeg, all one word.com. You can also go to our website, clearpeg.com. If you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, happy to get networked that way, and you'll find me Todd White on LinkedIn. There's more Todd Whites than you would think about, but just type in hashtag ClearPeg, and you'll find me in my shtick, I guess, where I'm a creator on there, so you'll find multiple things from me.
Well, excellent. I do hope people reach out to you. Todd, thank you for being on Leaders and Legacies and sharing these interesting stories from all around the world.
I am a storyteller, love telling a story that connects with people really quick.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.